Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott, back again for another episode of the Nolecast. Bud, as always, we'll thank our friends, Louisiana Hot Sauce, 3 simple ingredients, 1 fantastic product, and the great people at Tarpon Cellars, tarponsellers.com, coupon code Nolecast for 20% off any order there placed via their online store. And Bud, you've been busy running around. I was down in Tallahassee for a couple days working on some business things, and got a chance to um, take in a couple data points regarding the Florida State football team, and look forward to tonight's conversation.
Yeah, man, no doubt about it. It was Mags and I's anniversary, so went and did that, and before that was doing a whole lot of recruiting running around. So we'll have a little bit of chat about that. I guess we are going up against the premiere of a show called Succession, I guess, which I don't watch, but a couple people in the chat said that we're pretty bold to do that. All right, guys. Well, I guess if we're bold, we're bold. But we are, standing on business. And
last of my concerns, particularly being that this is not a one-off consumption model. So if you choose to watch Succession, congratulations. I hope you love it. And know that YouTube will have it for you as soon as you're ready to consume it, or your preferred platform of podcast consumption or anything else. So whether you're here with us tonight or not, that can be your choice. And I did see, I believe you put a picture on Instagram of yourself and your lovely bride. Congratulations, man. 7 years. Hard to believe that I was at that 7 years ago, and congratulations to both of y'all.
And I was at yours this year. It was awesome, man. All right, a couple housekeeping notes. Number one, my AC is busted. It will be repaired sometime this week. Sent the kids and Mags to their grandparents' house, which is down the street. And I got a portable AC in the office. So if you hear audio quality on my end tonight that is not quite as good as it normally is, that is why. Number two, if you're going to watch Succession, hit the like button and just let this thing run, and then go back and watch it. It actually helps our analytics, so we definitely appreciate that. All right. Florida State has had a good number of spring practices now. They just had their first scrimmage, and I guess where we start is quarterback. They don't usually like us talking about lineup stuff, but they talk about it themselves, being Mike Norvell and offensive coordinator Alex Atkins. So Jordan Travis didn't go. They're holding him out, kind of load management, simulating a scenario in which he would miss a game. And honestly, that's a pretty smart scenario to simulate, given his track record. Not his fault, but he's had injury issues over the course of his career and has missed a good number of games. So got to see some of the young guys out there. And from what I hear, man, like Duffy getting pushed by Glenn is good, but I think the fact that Glenn, who doesn't have he's the only one out there with the non-contact jersey off him, because Mike Norvell always makes those guys go through a contact scrimmage when they get to college first. Everybody else wears the non-contact. It sounds like Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell are very pleased with Brock Glenn, the true freshman out of Tennessee.
I was impressed. I was able to attend the scrimmage. Now I'll be try to be respectful here. Like, I don't think it's appropriate for me to wear my Battles End hat and also my Nolecast hat at the same time, but I'll acknowledge that of what the head coach did. Brock Glenn was really, really impressive. I mean, now not wearing that green jersey fits his game. Brock is he's an athlete. And I don't know if you want to say he's a plus level athlete, but he's a damn good athlete. And I think had 2 different runs of 15 or 20 yards in kind of creating something out of nothing. Made some mistakes, made some throws that you go, yeah, that's a kid that should probably just be getting back from prom or whatever, as far as where his actual cycle is, and still being a senior in high school. But Brock Glenn carries himself in a manner that you'd like to see out of your quarterback, and Brock Glenn was very, very impressive to me. Absolutely.
There are certainly a number of starters who missed the scrimmage, either because they're trying to work other guys or because they're currently dinged up. And in listening to Alex Atkins in his press conference, he said something to me that was interesting. He's like, "Hey, the spring is not really for offensive line continuity, right? It's spring is more of like a collective individual effort type thing where everybody's trying to get better at what their jobs are, right? So I'm not really concerned if you don't have the full starting lineup in there in spring and getting great continuity. Like to me, that's more what happens over the summer with your summer pass Skelly. When you get together, you play 7-on-7 and with some of your camaraderie and you're working on some of your stuff with the offensive line. But that's really good to hear about Glenn. It's always interesting to know just like how are these guys going to work together, especially when he is a true freshman and just got to campus. And you do have a lot of new pieces on this team, even though they are, because of the work that the team has done in the portal, pretty experienced pieces from elsewhere. So it's not like the game of football is new to all of them, but the game of college football is pretty new to Brock Glenn. And he was a guy I thought the high school numbers were not great, to be honest, right? Like he threw more picks than I think you'd love, and the completion percentage was not always great. But when you watched him, he definitely had some high-level tools and was a good athlete. And if you take enough shots on those guys, eventually you're probably going to hit. Whether that is, I don't know, I'm not really in the Tate Rodemaker camp, but maybe him, maybe a Duffy, or maybe it ends up being a Brock Glenn, or obviously the guy you got coming up now in Cromenhoek, who is, I know we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. But it has long been a situation where when you have offensive linemen out, the defensive line in the scrimmage just makes it to where like you're really not able to functionally have a good scrimmage. And I'm not saying that's not true anymore, but I do think that the overall quality of this offensive line is improved enough to where you can have a somewhat functional scrimmage with some of the backups in there, right? I mean, you're going to have some of your starters just destroying some of the backups, but I kind of feel like they function better than they used to because the depth on this offensive line.
The depth along the line of scrimmage is absurdly impressive. I mean, it is depth in general, man. This is not an attempt to like. This is not an attempt to promote the Battle's End, but the roster's very, very impressive from 1 through 85, and it'll be interesting to see them get down to that number. But the depth along the line of scrimmage just jumps out to you. And I'll say that the defensive line was very impressive, and we'll get back to quarterback and we'll go position by position. The defensive line was very impressive, but almost every offensive line 1, 2, 3, even the kind of scatterings of the third and fourth team created significant running holes against for every running back that was out there. To see the second and third team line continue to progress and work themselves out of the muck that position group has been in for 4 or 5 years is remarkable. And when you see some of these guys that are getting snaps on the second and third team, it's pretty eye-opening as to the dramatic changeover that's taken place on this roster. So
there are some position battles here that I'm really excited about, man. Like I don't think Murray Smith's a bad player, right? But he's certainly not like a great player. He's not somebody you look at and you say that guy's going to go play in the NFL sooner rather than later or wherever, right? You bring in Casey Roddick, something I'll go back to something that Willie Taggart said. I'm sure it's probably a Harbaugh'ism. It was like it's our job to bring in guys to take your job. And I mean, like I from what I hear, they're fairly pleased with Roddick too, man. Like that is a nice little battle there. The fact that you have somebody who's legitimately going to battle him at the center spot is encouraging, I think, man. Like that's big time.
Yep. Roddick, physically very impressive. Got to improve just in snapping in general. And that, I think, is something that you can have faith will continue to improve. But yeah. And we almost forget about it, but because he got hurt in the Duquesne game. But dude, Bless Harris has got the potential to, Bless Harris this is cliche, but Bless is almost like a whole nother signing or a whole nother transfer kid at this point because you just didn't get anything. You got a quarter and a half at, I guess, Duquesne or whatever it was before he He tore his shoulder or whatever that was. And Bless, again, I don't want to get into individual like plays and details and stuff. I don't think that's fair for me to do, but um, Bless Bless is impressive, and Bless had some moments that made you be like, "Whew, that's it's a player that maybe gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, and at times was one of the more impressive linemen out there, in my opinion."
I know guys are asking about Lyles. Lyles is not playing anymore.
Yes, he's
So,
on a coaching staff
yeah,
somewhere, I do believe.
yeah. I mean, so it's interesting you bring that up. Like the Bless Harris stuff is really encouraging, right? And people said like, Cedric saying here in the chat, like, hey, Bless was thought it was just a depth piece last year, correct? No, like Bless Harris was going to start, right? And I think you and I were quite concerned when early in that LSU week we got word like, oh man, shoulder surgery is that's not good, right? And FSU ends up beating LSU anyway. But no, like Bless Harris was a guy who came from was it D2 or FCS?
I thought it was FCS. I could be
okay.
wrong.
But like a lower division kids, you really weren't totally sure what you were going to get, but they were really excited about him once they got him on campus because of the athleticism and the length and he was a little skinny and the power needed to come and there were some refinement that was needed in his game. But I mean, dude, like if Bless Harris ends up being a guy who seriously is going to be in the competition for a starting job this year, like if the shoulder surgery didn't set him back, that much, I mean, you're really looking at like an offensive line class from that 2022 cycle, especially if you include Bless Harris. And it's very encouraging. Like Julian Armella, I've continued to hear like positive things. And like he and Alex Atkins praised him in the press conference, by the way. Like, okay, like continues to keep working at it. Quayshawn Sapp's a guy who's dropped some bad weight. Jalen Early, I know, is a guy they're very excited about. Heck, even Kanai Charlton. I mean, that's like 4 or 5 names I just read off that could be really useful pieces in your program down the line. That's hitting.
Very much so. I thought even a guy like Estes had a decent day considering what his assignment was. So I think you've got some impressive pieces up and down the line of scrimmage, and I know it's redundant. I know it's boring. But being there in person just made me appreciate all the conversation that we had the last time we did this and the job that Alex Atkins has done and the number of pieces that he's brought in. It's a damn good thing to see, man. I mean, you just look at it and it is very, very impressive. And Lucas Simmons limited in some of the stuff that I saw of him. And again, I don't want to go into details, but watching Lucas Simmons get to the second level is about as close to poetry in motion is some silly hyperbole, but that ain't what it looks like for most people. I mean, that's again, I will reiterate, it's going to take some time. He's going to grow into his body. He's going to make some mistakes, but that's a piece of clay, the types that you haven't had around here in probably 10 years to work with, if not probably more like 15 or maybe into the early 2000s. It's impressive.
There is an inner confidence that they've hit on that with him at that position. And that is so huge. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but man, we got one offensive tackle in the top 60 right now in the top 247. Not one in Florida, one player. This is now look, I think some will probably emerge. There will be some that the rating services get their eyeballs on in person. Some guys will grow or lean out or get a little bigger, what have you. But the fact that the offensive tackle crop, especially in Florida, but also nationally, is lacking in the way that it is, makes the value of getting a player like that in last year's cycle that much more important. Because you had an opportunity, you had to get it. And like to go baseball, like that was your pitch to hit. This year, there may not be a pitch to hit, right? Just, okay, there's nothing to swing at here, offensive tackle wise. So, I go back to that Brewers analogy you and I are kicking around. Like the teams that have the superstars, not always the ones that are playing amazing. It certainly helps, and you want to have your superstars. But the teams that seem to surprise people are the teams that have the fewest number of innings played throughout the season by guys who are below replacement level, and sort of the wink league system, if you will. I mean, there's not a lot of positions on this team where I'm like, if they got to play the backup, they're in real trouble. And that's not normal. Like almost the entire history of this podcast, we're like, shoot, that ain't good. Go back to 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember where I was. I was living with Sean at the time. And I'm like, man, like if they stay fully healthy on the offensive line, they could be all right up front. But like the backups can't play. Like they're not any good. And they had like the same five start almost the entire season, remember? And that was it's kind of nice. Like the whole thing doesn't fall apart if you got one guy go down at most positions. I mean, a Johnny Wilson's a dude. I don't know, like he's a different piece at receiver because of the size. But you got to feel pretty good about this offense right now.
I don't know anywhere that I don't feel very good about the offense. It's really, I mean, the backs, a little bit hard to evaluate because your top three backs were wearing green jerseys, or your top two backs, or maybe your top one back. And the only reason I say that is because Rodney Hill was not wearing a green jersey. And I'm not saying that anything that Norvell, Atkins, or anybody else hasn't. So I'm completely fine being transparent here. Bell might have been the most impressive, or Rodney Hill might have been the most impressive player on the field. I mean, he had an early run where we all know what Rodney's speed is, but took on a tackler and broke said tackle and turned it into a touchdown. Had another long run that I think went for a touchdown. Had another long run that I think was brought back. Rodney Hill, different guy. Lawrence Toafili had at least one run that would have gone for a touchdown had he not been in a green jersey and it was blown dead because of a defender got a hand on a shoulder pad or something. And Trey Benson in a green jersey is just almost impossible to evaluate because there's just plays where, okay, a safety taking that angle against Trey Benson with a head of steam is not going to bring him down 99 times out of 100, but he's wearing green. So doesn't matter that the safety was, late and has his hat on the wrong side, et cetera, plays dead. I think Trey Benson may be one of the better running backs in the country next year. And I think Rodney Hill will be a fantastic complementary piece and they'll continue to work Toafili in. I almost just would evaluate Toafili from a total yards perspective because he's going to get involved in the running game, certainly. But, they love certainly the wheel route and they love that angle route that they work with him. And so, I mean, that Toafili's a unique piece and they'll continue to use him. And then, CJ Campbell and Keziah Holmes are very nice players in their own regard. So,
it's like, it doesn't seem at this point like you're missing Treshaun Ward. And that's a good thing. Like Treshaun Ward is a good football player, but he's not like a future pro, no doubt type, right? He's not a special athlete. Now, I thought some of the qualities he had were pretty nice, as far as feel for the game and spatial abilities, understanding basically how to run within a scheme. And those are things, but those are things that to a certain extent you can coach and need to coach, right? You need to hold on to your guys that are physical freaks because you can't really teach some of the stuff that Benson has. You can teach some of the stuff that Treshaun Ward had. So as for in terms of like the player retention job done, certainly I think it's encouraging that Trey Benson, is signed up with the battle's end. And you lose Treshaun Ward, okay. That if you're doing your job well, as Florida State, as Mike Norvell, as Derek Ray, as Johnson, that shouldn't cripple you, right? Like that should be a type of player that you should be able to replace fairly easily, honestly, if you're recruiting at FSU like you should be. And I think it's encouraging that they hit on Rodney Hill. I know that was a guy that Ryan Bartow was heavily involved with, and I think he deserves some credit there in that recruitment as well, certainly. So, yeah, man, that's encouraging. Also, Yeah, Cedric, appreciate you jumping in the chat there. We will get you an answer on the VA loans from the legendary team, which we'll talk about up in a second. But I do want to talk about all day Dre, man. Vandrivius Jacobs, a dude who, we got to see quite a bit as a recruit. Very productive high school kid, not an elite athletic profile, but somebody who really understands how to play the game. Like I think there's some Trayshawn Ward to Dre Jacobs, and like I know Mike Norvell mentioned him a lot. Like the guy has a great feel for how to play the game and is really refined, and that's encouraging to see, man.
I think refined is a very appropriate word. He is. If you just walked into the stadium and watched that, I think you're going to guess that that 19 is a third-year player. I mean, does not look like a kid that just walked onto campus. I think this is just me, but having a knowledge as to what he's done so far and watching what he did on Saturday. Like when they do the TV and they do like the TV first team, are you necessarily going to see a picture of Vandrivius Jacobs? I'm not sure for the LSU game. Does Vandrivius Jacobs have a chance to take a hell of a lot of snaps this year and have starter type minutes? Does he have a chance to maybe be the person that's best positioned to take Pokey Wilson snaps? I think so. I do. I mean, I think get ready to see that guy play a lot of minutes, catch a lot of balls. Again, not somebody that may catch a quick slant and turn a 12-yard pass into an 82-yard touchdown or something, but damn if that kid is smooth and seems to be in the right place, knows what he's doing, and had some moments that made you go, oof, okay, yeah, that's a kid that's going to be playing next year.
I don't necessarily think the comparison is perfect, but I'm trying to think about guys that he reminds me of. And I go back to that 2013 team that had two guys on there. In terms of like a smoothness to him, there's a little, I don't know, maybe a little Rashad Green there. Although I kind of think Rashad's top end was probably better. Yeah. And also Kenny Shaw coming out of high school was actually pretty refined as well.
I think the Kenny Shaw one is pretty good. Yeah. Rashad Green may be the smoothest wide receiver I've ever seen. Just that's a different type of cat. Kenny Shaw, maybe a little bit more fluid version of Kenny Shaw. I was impressed, and I think get ready to see that dude catching some balls, and not to give away anything from a snap count perspective, but that guy's not going for 19 snaps.
Not going cheap in our draft.
No, he's
okay.
not.
All right. No. All right. So now I think my strategy going to have to be like, I need to drive up this price, and I'm going to have Ingram bidding like 650
yes,
on Preston.
619. Yeah. It is very impressive. Maybe not quite as impressive as the legendary team of Chad and Shannon, but you're going to be seeing 19 most certainly. And when you're not seeing 19, the number you need to be thinking about is 855 FSU loan. Shannon and Chad are fantastic guys. See that Cedric was actually answering another listener's question about the VA loans, but we'll get you guys in touch with the right people, and the right people is Shannon Young and his team. Fantastic experience for Bud, and fantastic experience for damn near 500 of our listeners now.
I always say 844 FSU loan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Am I wrong on this?
I know. I think you're right.
I feel like we've done. Now, I think you have 5 on your mind because we are doing 500 loans with these guys. But I'm fairly sure it's 844 FSU.
It's good to get the phone number right. Yeah, thank you. 844 FSU. Call 855 too. See if they want to talk Florida State ball. But 844 is probably the one that will be slightly more receptive to your Nolecast specific questions. We'll put it that way.
Oh man, legendary home loans team. If you guys don't know, I got both my home loans through these dudes. Chad and Shannon are awesome. They've been with us really since day one. I remember going to I think it was like bow campers down there in South Florida. That's before Madso had a presence in South Florida, and they're like, man, if we do like 2 or 3 loans, we'd be really happy in the first year. I was like, how about like 505 years? Like that could work certainly. So homes are still being sold, and if you want to get a great professional experience and awesome rates, knowledge of the market, and talk a little FSU ball, that's the number to call. All right. Anybody else in the offense that we need to talk about that, like, you feel like is somebody that maybe we haven't told people about to the extent that we need to tell them about?
Hakeem Williams had one or two nice plays. It'd be interesting to see how they get him involved. Hakeem Williams and Jaheim Bell almost look like the same physical type player. I mean, both of them are very impressive. Kyle Morlock had another solid day. I think that's a really good pickup. To this day, I still can't wrap my mind around the fact that you got a player out of Shorter College who may be able to make an immediate impact for you, but I guess that's just how it works out.
Winston Wright did go, by the way.
Winston Wright went, and Winston Wright had a nice touchdown.
I know that was a question out of the chat.
Yeah.
Like, hey, did Winston Wright play? Yeah, he's back. Like, I think he's got a chance to help.
Yeah, he went. I just never saw him before the injury, so I can't make it's that comparison, but it certainly looks like that guy. He didn't look like he was recovering an injury when he scored from 45 or 50 yards out. I'll put it that way. So he was impressive. I expect that Wright will probably be your kick returner as well, assuming his health continues to chart in the right direction. Kentron Portier had some what I believe were fairly nice moments. Johnny, I mean, you know what you're getting out of Johnny. Yeah. So yeah, I think you're real comfortable at wide receiver. You're going to try to figure out who takes Pokey snaps, to an extent, who takes Micah snaps, but Micah's contributions kind of ebbed and flowed in various games. So it's not as though you're, I think more your punt returner conversations, more your immediate what you'll do. And Deuce Spann was running with the ones a lot. He caught one ball where he kind of reversed field, and you got to see Deuce Spann at top speed, and that's a fun thing to watch. I mean, you get a feel for just how absurdly talented a raw athlete that guy is. I will be curious to see if he can continue to progress. And I mean, if that guy's a starting wide receiver for you, then he's made a hell of a transition in his career. I think he's still got a little bit of work to do before he's a surefire number one.
All right, switching sides of the ball here. Did you happen to see Mike Norvell's comments about Patrick Payton?
I did. And Payton was good. The defensive line was solid. Just as two guys that have done this podcast for 13 or 14 years, I also thought that, and Payton was good. Payton had one play in particular there. You're like, oh, yeah, that dude is the ACC Rookie of the Year, and that dude looks like he's a better form of what he was last year. But as two old heads, as I was saying, I had to immediately think that maybe you're talking to a player that wasn't there as well in our defensive end from Tucker, who has missed a couple days of practice here. So again, that's not really conspiratorial. That's just two guys that have been around ball.
I think that's out there that McClendon hasn't really been with the team, so we'll see what he decides to do. Kind of like, I definitely took Mike Norvell's comments as speaking praise for Pat Payton, but also being like, hey, we're not going to give special treatment to guys who are like, not special.
Yeah.
Like I kind of, my thoughts on Trayshawn Ward are like poor like growth hormone all over those, right? Like McClendon is a solid football player. He's not going to be an NFL player. He's not a difference maker. He's I'm not saying he's a jag. I think he's like a little better than that, but like he's not somebody that ACC teams or especially SEC teams are scared of. He's not somebody who has played so well that his spot is guaranteed as a starter, nor should it be. You know, like I doesn't really like if he wants to bounce. All right, you know, like the decisions you have to make decisions for you, and like he's not going to play as much as he wants to play, most likely, I would think, or be guaranteed a starting spot.
Yep. Gilbert Edmonds was impressive and was rightfully acknowledged, I think, by Norvell. Lamont Green has work to do, and it's got to put on some weight and will over time. Again, a kid that is otherwise a freshman or a senior in high school right now. Lamont Green had a couple plays that let you know that maybe there's something. Not maybe there's something there. There is something there. You just gotta. It's going to take a second to see it. Had one rep in particular against Lucas Simmons that was impressive. Showed a couple of pass rush skills beyond just, hey, I'm strong and fast. And a lot of times that's what defensive ends can get, kind of lured into at the high school level, because there's only so many tackles that can block an athlete like that. So I think you really like where you are from a defensive line perspective. I will say that, I think new shiny pieces tend to grab people's attention, and I'm as excited as anybody about what Jackson can be. I think maybe collectively as a fan base that maybe there's some people that have gotten a little ahead of themselves on him. And I'm look, man, I'm real happy that Jackson's on the roster. I'll put it that way, and love what he has the potential to be. But I think he's going to have to continue to develop, and that defensive line, as I said this either last show or 2 shows ago, nobody's going to walk into reps there. I mean, you have to earn them, and you have to beat out a lot of good football players to get reps on the interior of this line. So everybody's going to have to be at the top of the game, and only more so once Braden Fisk gets that green jersey taken off, and he's in the middle as well.
So obviously you're not going to comment on who is going against who, but like the one thing I was told was, like, with some of these D-line stats that you may hear thrown out there, just be aware there is still a pretty big difference between some of the offensive line guys, right? Like, I mean, if you're going against a walk-on or a fourth stringer, and you just because on the day you were the second string, so second, 2s against 4s, 1s against 3s at times, that you could kind of be expected to win almost every rep at times. So, not really sure how much you can get from linebackers in the scrimmage where most of the guys are wearing green jerseys. So
you can't.
You know what I'm saying?
Tatum Bethune had one or two nice plays. It's almost impossible to evaluate Deloach with what he does because of every person that he's out there, coming in direct contact with was wearing a green jersey for the most part. DJ Lundy looked pretty solid in the reps that I saw him get in. So, linebacker is an area maybe if you could find something in the portal that's an area that you would look. But just candidly, I will tell you that that's not up until now, and now from speaking from a macro perspective, I think there will be a lot of linebackers that you can choose from on the whole. But that's not. I don't know that immediately that this particular group or crop of portal, at least that was available in the original portal window, was of particular interest. I do think Omar Graham has continued to progress and will be in a place to take some of those snaps that kind of Lundy worked himself into last year, and it'll be fascinating to see what the introduction of Nicholson looks like on this unit.
Absolutely, man. All right, so I don't know. I've heard some encouraging things about Fentrell Cypress. We know that corner performance for the most part, and people don't want to hear this, but it's pretty true if you look at the numbers. Like, corner performance and defensive back performance is pretty wildly variable from year to year, right? Like, okay, yeah, like Deion Sanders and Rod Woodson and Champ Bailey, okay, they didn't get beat a whole lot, but almost everybody who's not in that super elite group, and I would put Cypress as not in that super elite group, right? Because if he was, he would be in the NFL draft, not in Tallahassee. I think he's a good college football player. And I think corner is extremely hard to get in the portal. So FSU did a tremendous job in getting him, right? But like the other corners that were around his level, talent-wise, one was Travis Hunter, who followed Dion to Colorado. And by the way, looks like he's playing like mostly receiver now, which he always dominated receiver in 7-on and was a really good high school receiver too. And Denver Harris, who was in the portal because he got kicked out of A&M, right? So it's really hard to find even above average corners in the portal. Everybody wants them. FSU got, probably the top guy who was in the portal for a non-disciplinary, non-coaching change reason,
35 minutes into this, not to take us off, but track. Did you see that the Jimbo press conference? I know everybody's attention was the comments or kind of lack of clarity he had as far as Bobby Petrino and whether or not he was going to call plays and stuff. But maybe this is just me being myopic and focused on that of what I spend all my time around. But the fact that the guy that I knew 8 years ago sat at the dais, answered a question about an incoming prospect, acknowledged that he had gotten to campus and wasn't sure whether or not he was going to stay with the team and that he might go back to UTEP, almost made my head explode. I mean, I just can't. Now I realize there's somewhat of a similar situation at Florida. Ultimately, I think that kid's going to end up staying at Florida because I don't know where else he can go. And that's, again, I'm not trying to sidetrack us, but I couldn't get over that Jimbo Fisher sat there, answered a question on a kid, and then goes, well, there's a bit of a situation with him. Well, I guess it's not a situation. He's just here, and he's not really sure if he wants to stay here. So, wow, man. Wow.
Yeah.
I good for, I mean, all the money and all the ranches in the world. And I'm happy for him and many future generations of Fishers. But that is not the dude that I knew 11 or 12 years ago. I mean, it's remarkable to see. So
I mean, there's a lot of takeaways from that press conference. I was, man, I am not like, I don't know what to say about this. Do you think he'd rather have it fail doing it his way than succeed and just get the credit for hiring a guy that does it a little bit differently? I mean, like, you see that much of a control? Because like we knew sort of like from, talking to guys around him and, heck, just shooting breeze that he really thought a lot of these modern college offenses were like BS. Like they weren't doing it like the right way and like that type of crap. Even though they're like scoring points, which stopped doing
those devious point scores.
And like he's still saying stuff like everybody's running the same stuff. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like you think the way that you run that? I mean, you may both run. You may both run belly. You may both run some G scheme stuff. You think the way you dress it up? You think the motions are the same? Like you think you're accomplishing the same stuff? You think the way you pair it with RPOs and actual like downfield blocking is the same? Because it looks like defenses love playing Jimbo's offense. And for him to say like they'll figure it out who calls the plays. Whew.
Yeah. Yeah, huh. I mean, I just know the guy that I somewhat knew and had very good friends working for would have poured gasoline on his fire and started a major fire before he answered a question in a press conference acknowledging that a kid had been on campus for a week and is already thinking about leaving. I mean, that Jimbo would have sat there and talked to you for 10 minutes and told you that the guy was going to be a future Hall of Famer before he acknowledged something like that. That was just crazy. So I don't want to get distracted too much on this, but honestly, I've been meaning to ask you about that in 1v1 conversation. And no better time to have one conversation than when you're recording a podcast. So just a wild thing to see.
Who is Dusty May, and why are people in the chat asking about him?
Is Dusty May the FAU coach?
I just Googled him. Apparently so. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Where did he go to college? I don't know. Like, what? Is there some connection here that Mike Alford I'm missing for basketball?
Yeah, I just think they see
coaches in Florida.
Yeah, I think they see a Florida coach having success, and I don't know, man. Basketball will be fascinating. I mean, we'll just let that play out. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't know what I can say that is not going to be construed as so.
And the job's not open right now, so
no, the job's not open. You have a legendary coach who's going to have to make some adjustments, and be fascinating to see how it plays out next year.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. I know Travis in the chat asks how has AZ Thomas looked. Honestly, man, like I don't want to say good or bad. I just hasn't been mentioned to me as somebody who's like killing it, but also hasn't been mentioned as somebody that sucks. So I assume he's just learning and developing, right?
I think they're really happy with AZ. I just think it's a very Jerry Jones has turned into a really good football player. Renardo Green, ditto. Fintrell is Fintrell Cypress. I mean, that's a guy who might have been back into the second round pick last year. I think all the excitement and optimism and everything that surrounded AZ Thomas last year is still there, and you're just going to continue to develop him. And AZ Thomas is a massive part of the future of this program. And same with Greedy Vance. You know, Greedy's had I don't remember anything particularly from Saturday where Greedy flashed, but there's a reason why Adam Fuller spent 2 or 3 minutes talking about him in the press conference. Greedy's had a pretty impressive run of practices as well.
He's gotten a lot better, man. Like yeah. I'm excited about it. Like he can be kind of a pest. That's encouraging. You know, they have some pieces, and like this is going to be a major task for this coaching staff to get this secondary to play better. And I kind of think they can.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Big shout out to our friends at Congruity. CongruityHR.com is the website. I can tell you that we're incorporating Congruity into some of the back end of the Battle's End as well when it comes to payroll and other things. And there's only but one phone call I would make. Also, it's a pretty wild weather here in Atlanta right now, bud. So if I tap out for a second or we start to have some internet issues, that's why. But Congruity HR does not care about the weather in Atlanta, so I need to stop talking about them in the middle of their ad read. Matt Lewis, fantastic individual, fantastic Florida State fan, and will be a fantastic resource for you and your business, as he has been for Bud and myself. Again, if you want to reach out to me, whether a DM on Twitter or an email to the account, I'll be happy to put you in touch with Matt and his team. But he has done a fantastic job for, I believe, now more than 10 Nolecast listeners in their businesses.
Look at that.
And Congruity HR and the Nolecast has been a great partnership, and we're pretty damn confident it would be for you and your business as well. So big thank you to the people at Congruity.
I did actually drop Congruity's name the other day. I was at a golf store, a little family-owned golf store by me, and they were actually having a conversation about their payroll needs, literally. And I was browsing. I was like, "Hey, just gonna say, I have a little podcast, and we have a sponsor called Congruity. They're full, HR solutions, payroll, and I think they have a 100% renewal rate for people who have used them through us. So that to me says a lot about those guys. And say, give them a call if you want. Okay, we might. Cool. There you go. So anyway, Matt, if you get a golf store now, that's
put that on the sheet as number 11.
Yeah, that's number 11. Yes, sir. Okay. Let's see a couple other things here. Florida State got some important out-of-state targets in for this weekend as far as recruiting visits. That's important. A couple offensive tackles got in. Like, again, that's something you got to continue to monitor. Let's talk about some guys who are either committed or are like top targets for the Noles and where they ended up in the latest top 247. Obviously, I work for 24/7 Sports, and we have not put out a new top 247 since November. I think that's actually purposeful. We don't want to just do it willy-nilly, and we want to make sure you're evaluating all of the new junior season film that gets dropped, and a lot of that comes out like Christmas time, January. Like as coaches get all their seniors out the door, they're able to sort of help their kids make their highlight tapes and kind of just get the word out about some of their players. We're able to see these dudes in person at camps, at combines, getting some verified measurables, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, like it takes a long time to go through a couple thousand kids, right? And so we do have some decent changes here within the process. I would say a couple things, just running down the list here. Jeremiah Smith, who's FSU's top receiver target. I think that's pretty obvious to everybody. And I mean, like he's the top receiver target for, I would guess, every school in the country. Actually moved up to the number 2 overall player in the country. That is pretty rare that we put a receiver that high, but he is absolutely legit. Cam Coleman also got 5-star status from 189 to 21. Again, that's a receiver from Phoenix City, Alabama. I expect him to go to Auburn, but FSU is still recruiting him. I don't know. I haven't really. Look, if the kid keeps coming on your campus, keeps saying nice things, I guess you got to keep doing it. But also, I remember the Keldrick Falk situation from last year, and the fact that Auburn's receiver room right now is pretty terrible. They have a lot of playing time to offer. Blah blah blah. Landon Thomas, really no change in his rating. Kept that same at your 5-star tight end. Committed to Georgia, but he remains the only 5-star tight end in what is a very strong tight end year. JoJo Trader, I think the rating actually stayed unchanged, but went from 16 to 38 as we just found some guys that we liked a little better. Still a high-level prospect there, and that'll happen. Luke Kromenhoek, got to watch all the junior stuff. 7-on-7, blah, blah, blah. Moves up to number 66 in the country from 94. So his ascent continues. Jason Zandamela, 4-star offensive lineman now from 141 to 80. Came into the Orlando Under Armour event looking like $1 million. Can snap, can move, can bend. That's really solid. Cam Davis, as the running back position, continues to be de-emphasized throughout the sport of football, especially with the NFL draft, where we're looking at Bijan Robinson, some of these over-under props where he gets drafted at 20. I'm like, I mean, Bijan's like the best running back to come out of college in a good long while. And like they're thinking may not even a top 20 pick. So Cam, I think his overall rating actually remains unchanged, just from 45 to 86 as we continue to bump up premium positions over running back. Other names that we need to know here. Let's see. 2 receivers that I think got de-emphasized a little bit. I think this probably matches some of the recruiting patterns on them as well. James Madison and Chance Robinson, 2 South Florida guys who I know FSU had been involved with, certainly remain involved with, but just maybe not. Maybe just finding guys that you like a little better overall, right? It's not anything that they are necessarily doing wrong, but as you get more data, sometimes other people's data looks a little better, right? And so you got to make some adjustments there. Looking here, defense wise, Charles Lester, no change. He's 30. He was 31. Remains a really high level corner prospect for us. Jamari Howard. This is actually one to note here. Jamari Howard, South Florida corner, made a big jump all the way up to number 75 nationally. He's a Michigan State commit, so another one to note here, Zay Mincy, safety that I know Florida State likes an awful lot, all the way up to number 88. So tall, real freaky. Another one here, 4-star LJ McCray, goes from an unrated prospect into the top 100 at 90. His coordination and stuff right now is like he's still very much learning how to use his body and grow into it. And I think I said this about 3 or 4 episodes ago. You're kind of able to see why he was not not getting the sack numbers that maybe the initial pressures that he put on tape would have shown. Jordan Pride, the safety FSU commit, drops from 41 to 96. Obviously, he has a torn ACL, so you're going to have more confidence in guys who don't have torn ACLs, and he'll have an opportunity to show what he can do in his senior season. Kai Bates, a guy that FSU was fairly early on to offer here by me in Orlando at Edgewater, goes from an unrated prospect to number 107. That is directly related to him playing more more DB and playing DB at a high level in some 7-on events, which I think is a great spot to evaluate corner play because it's just nonstop. Can you cover? Can you not? Right. Brendan Jacob, another guy FSU is very high on. Orlando Jones, safety, into the top 130. Trying the other guys that FSU really cares about here. Let me see. I think that's pretty much it. Fred Gaskin, who was a guy that played a lot as a younger guy, 236. He falls out, which obviously if you're going to 236 to 247 is not much of a drop. It's just you got to move guys out as you move dudes into the rankings. So that's kind of your rundown of your top targets. FSU recruiting wise, high school man is definitely recruiting a higher caliber player than what they have been recruiting, and I think that shows up in the class they have and in the class that they are hoping to build.
It would be fascinating to see, man. I really do think that if you go out there and you win the LSU game, that you're going to be one of the hotter properties in football. I don't know that you're going to be beating, Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State for kids, left, right, and center, but you're going to be real competitive, and I think you're going to have an awful lot of interest in you that is not uncommon. That when this program starts to operate at close to peak efficiency, does pretty damn well in the world of recruiting, and I think you'll see that pretty shortly. And the general trend that I've been saying for about a year or so now, that I thought Florida State's recruiting was going to be much more kind of. I think the phrase that I used was much more reflective of the baseball card, and what I mean that is that if you look at a guy who hits 286 with 32 home runs most times. That's what he ends up getting to by the end of the year. That's just where production tends to be somewhat static, and I think Florida State at near peak efficiency or approaching peak efficiency will start to have a consistent run of recruiting at the high school level that is more familiar with what we've seen historically. So. I'll talk in circles more about baseball cards for another minute or so if you'd like me to, but that's what I meant there.
No, I mean, I think about it like your premium positions here, right? The ones that increasingly you have a harder time getting in the portal generally. Corner, pass rusher, the real top end receiver types. Although USC did get Jordan Addison, for the most part, like most of the receivers that we saw out there are going somewhere to be a receiver too. In terms of guys like who were receiver ones at smaller schools, they end up being like WR2 at some bigger schools. Offensive tackle, obviously, just look at the offensive tackle position in the transfer portal. It's extremely hard to get one, especially one that can play at a high level. Look, tackle, okay, but I don't know that any team out there is really doing a great job with that. Corner, I think you're doing very well with Lester and Bates, and you have some other guys, obviously Jamari Howard, dudes that you're not committed but have the irons in the fire on. Pass rusher, I would say continues to be a bit of a concern of mine. In this high school class, you're going to need to hit on a big-time pass rusher. You failed to get a high-level one in last year's high school class, and you failed to do so the prior year as well. And those guys just – I know that you got Jermaine Johnson and Jared Verse. If you really think that's repeatable, I got some land to sell you, man. Yeah. That's incredible, but it's not likely repeatable and certainly not something upon which you want to rely. So have to do a better job recruiting the defensive end position. I think you're getting a lot of love at receiver right now from some elite kids. And I mean, if the floor of your class is TJ Abrams and Camden Fryer, that's a hell of a receiver class you're bringing in.
Yeah.
So very encouraging.
These positive Nolecasts are a hell of a lot of fun.
Look at that, man. I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Chat,
absolutely.
the chat's enjoying it. Did you stop by Charlie Park?
I did not. I was trying to get up there last night, and Tallahassee was Tallahasseeing. We ended up staying in one place, and we ended up staying at Madso, which was a hell of a lot of fun, bud. Some stories that I will convey to you off air on that. But Tallahassee's a special place, and I'm only reminded of that every time that I go back. But no, we were hanging out at Madso and having a great time doing it. So whether or not you're hanging out at Madso, like Township seems to be just the place for the kids. They be hanging out. It's remarkable to see the line every time I walk past Township to get in there, or Charlie Park. Matt Thompson and his team certainly know what they're doing when it comes to this restaurant and hospitality thing. And I'm just fortunate. I had an opportunity to sit down and talk with Matt. Had met him with coffee while I was up there on Friday and playing some things in the future that we'll be working on. And great dude who's built a hell of a business for himself there. And any of the properties we're fond of suggesting to you, but particularly Charlie Park. And if you are going to heed our request to hit up Charlie Park, particularly during the spring game weekend, I would make reservations. It is a very popular place, and was happy to hear some of the younger members of the Battles End team talk to me about how cool their Sunday brunch was. And I said, yes,
There you go.
I'm very familiar. I know all about it, but thank you for telling me. So,
They think
it's
you're
a
not
great
hip,
place.
man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I can't imagine.
Yes.
Oh man. All right. I'm pretty much tapped out here.
Yeah. No, it's if you're a Florida State fan, and research show us that about 98% of you that listen are, feel good, man. Your program's in a place that it hasn't been in a long time. And for the 1% of you that are Clemson listeners, always appreciate your listenership, and we look forward to potentially playing you one or two times in the next season as well. But no, it's remarkable where the program is headed. It's remarkable the turnaround that we've all witnessed here over the past 2 or 3 years, and I have a feeling it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun these next couple of years as well. So this has been great, man. We'll do it again in a week or so, or when we feel is a next appropriate window, if something should present itself earlier. But this has been great. This has been right at about an hour, bud. And for those of you who chose to watch it live, or for those of you who are just checking in after Succession, we appreciate it. And
Wait,
we'll be back to you soon.
are you saying that they're going to watch the Nolecast in succession after Succession?
After Succession, yes, absolutely. And many other puns as well. But no, fantastic time to get down there, take a look at this team. Encourage as many of you all that can to go down there for the spring game. We'll have more information on this. I should have mentioned this before freaking minute 59. But the Battles End will be putting on basically like a minor fan day. We are trying to make every athlete that we have available, or we're trying to make every athlete that we have under contract, which is north of 60, available for a free autograph session on Langford Green before the spring game on Saturday. Working very, very hard on that, and I'll have more information for all of you out there. But that is something that we're doing, and that's going to be a hell of an undertaking and something that we're really excited about. So
I might take the boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. So Liam just loves Jordan Travis, right? And just like absolutely just all about it. I am taking him to the Rays game on Thursday. Opening day. He likes Wander Franco. He wants the yellow arm sleeves. I'm like, bro, you're 3. You play T-ball. We're not going to rock the yellow arm sleeves until we stop chasing butterflies. But yeah, man, dude, that sounds like an awesome time. Take the kids out there, get a couple autographs.
Again, I will have more information for you as we're doing it, but we're getting tense. We've got a band line up, trying to get a bouncy house or something like that for Liam and other children when they're not getting Jordan Travis's autograph. So we're working on it. It's going to be cool. And like I said, I'll have more information to you, you the general public, as we put it together here.
Oh, you want a bounce house story?
Please.
All right. So I had to run some errands on Friday and knocked out most of my conference calls I had to ever work. Anyway, got them done, and I had to take 3-year-old, and so we hit Costco. We're going through getting everything that Mags put on the list, and they have this shark bounce house suspended from the ceiling, and so immediately she's like, "Hey, we go see the bounce house." I'm like, "All right, we'll see it when we get to the aisle, right, man?" Because you kind of keep that carrot out there, and as we get closer, he's starting to be like, "Think we could jump in it?" I'm like, this thing, like in my head, like absolutely not. This thing is suspended from cables, and like I'm not even really sure I could throw you this high into this thing. But I asked the guy, like, who worked there, because like Liam's actually like, "Hey," I'm like, "Hey, can we jump in this bounce house?" And instead of being like, "Oh no, unfortunately, it's 25 feet in the air and store policy says we're not allowed to jump in the bounce house," he's like, "Well, you'll have to ask your dad. If he buys it, you can certainly jump in it at home." Like, oh no, like this is killing me. Like I'm just.
You own a bounce house now?
I do not own a bounce house because it wouldn't fit in the truck. Thankfully, the list of stuff that Maggie had to get was big enough to where it would not fit in the truck. But
well, there is Costco.com, so
there is, yeah,
there is absolutely.
Do I need to buy $400 shark? Dude, that is one thing. Like when you get kids, you're not really like certain things surprise you how much they cost, and other things like this should be more expensive, and it's not. Bounce houses, are like shockingly expensive. I don't know if like that type of like vinyl is more expensive than I realized or whatever, but like there's some bounce houses that are like a couple $1,000.
Okay, so that is far more than I would have ever
for your battles and planning purposes. Dude.
Yes,
I don't know what they rent for, but they got to be up there.
Well, we'll start evaluating the bounce house market.
Oh man, yeah. All right,
brother. Thoroughly enjoyed it as always. If you get a chance to like, subscribe, give us any kind of feedback on whatever podcast platform it is that you run across the Nolecast, know that it is greatly appreciated. And from myself, Bud, and everybody else associated with the Nolecast, this has been a great one. And thank you for the warning, Keith. And I have made it through some very nasty weather without the podcast otherwise being interrupted. So there it is. Bud, talk to you soon, bro. Enjoyed it.
All right. If you guys have an HVAC company in Orlando, hit me up ASAP. I'll see you guys.